Hey everybody, P.T. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show. Today's intro is for a guy named Billy Samoa Saleebey who went to LMU film school, made a film called Rolling about his life and his friend's life experimenting and living with the MDA style, and it was a smash hit. And as a young guy, he's like, yeah, this is it. I'm doing the film thing. But then he's like, you know what? I'm going to get into solar energy, and started working in the solar industry and doing well in sales and that kind of thing. So that turned into being a Tesla employee and doing internal communications for them, and up and up and up and successful. Over my gosh, talking to and being inspired by Elon Musk. And so he is our guest. Billy is, not Elon yet. We'll get Elon soon. My co-producer, co-host, Macedonia Connection, Damjan Gjorgjiev, is my co-host today. He produced this thing. He did all the hard work. I'm just the one who gets to talk about the intro. So big shout to Damjan. I love working with him. He also works with Billy, so it's really cool to talk about that. Billy has a podcast called Insight Out, and you can go to insightoutshow.com. It's in the show notes. You can find it there. And I hope you guys will enjoy Billy. He is super good, people. You can follow him on Facebook. You can follow him on Twitter. Probably better on Facebook. Okay, so if you like what we do, and I hope that you do, and if you're new here, let me tell you about the show, because it's pretty cool what the Break It Down show is. Look, this past week we had, we had Peter Van Buren, who talked about COVID and understanding response from the State Department level and the news level. We had Wes Mabey, our friend and producer, who brought Ray on the show to talk about a Scottish lady that sings country music. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Peter Jang was on the show. Peter Jang is a stuntman, actor, writer, producer, director, entrepreneur here in Hollywood. And then today, of course, we have Billy. Oh, and don't forget, John McCaskill, a Navy SEAL turned guru of things like meditation. So you see what we do. We spread around. We get a lot of different things going on, and that's why this show is so great. Support us by subscribing, going to breakitdownshow.com, maybe getting a t-shirt, commenting, reviewing. All of these things are powerfully helpful to us. As always, and we always do this, we have a very powerful charitable charter here. Now, normally I say save the brave.org, which I just did. But today I want to remind you, even if you're not a supporter of Save the Brave, which is totally fine, you can always give the gift of charity. You go to CharityOnTop.org. You can buy charity for someone else. So, like, let's say, hey, I don't know what that name of that charity is that Pete always talks about. I don't know how that could be. But I know Pete will appreciate it. So you can literally go to Charity on Top, put, $25 in, right? And then it will email me and it'll say, hey, here's some charity. And I can literally give it to any charity. We've got a bunch of shows talking about that. So when in doubt, give someone the gift of charity with a Charity on Top gift card. I know you guys will appreciate that. Super, super great to do that. Make sure you guys are giving to charity. Okay, enough of that. It's Friday. Everybody have a great time. Here comes Billy.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland. This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Billy Samoa Saleebey, and I'm listening to The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yes, we have Billy on the show with us today. Billy has a wonderful story, and I'm excited to tell it. Most excited because I have my producer, Damjan Gjorgjiev, on the show as well. He produced this episode, so I'm going to mostly get out of the way and just kick in some ridiculous questions and some jokes while these guys have a conversation. Damjan, tell us about our man, Billy.
Yeah, I'm really happy that we are doing this show today with Billy. By the way, we were planning to do this in months, and finally we are here, so yeah, thank you for coming on the Break It Down show, Billy, and welcome. And this is, by the way, the day after your birthday, so first of all, happy birthday, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Damjan. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Now, as you all know, I love doing podcasts. Is the thing that makes me happy, and I do it every day. And I got lucky to start working with Billy. That was a few months ago when a lady that works with me told you about me, and I want to give her a shout out. That's Deb from Housewives of True Crime. And before we start, I want to let you know something. Of all the episodes I've ever produced, both on podcasts and radio shows, That's probably 1,000 episodes. Both the album fights on the Break It Down show and your episodes, Billy, called Inside Out, are definitely the hardest shows to ever do. So I'm not being offensive or rude. I just love it when I have challenges. So thank you, both of you, for that.
We like making your work difficult. So
Yeah.
happy to continue doing it.
And you know how hard those album fights are to put together.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing it. And even then, like, we still can't seem to put enough energy into those things to get them done. Because, and I don't know if you're following this, Billy, but the album fight concept is you take two albums, say they're both 10-track albums, and you put them head to head, like in a boxing format. So you score it on a 10-point must system like you would do in a regular fight. And, you know, song one versus song one. And then the three judges have to actually break down that round and decide who wins. And so you have this impossible conversation with music, with multiple people and intros and outros and analysis and all these other things. And it's just a great ride, and it's so much work. And I appreciate the hell out of Damjan for doing that, because it is not easy.
Yeah, and I know also that Billy is into music, so he can get on the album fights if he wants to do it.
Yeah,
it's
no, I'm
kind of
loving,
hard, but
I'm loving the concept.
so let me get back into your early days. What was Billy's childhood like?
Wow. Well, my childhood started on an island in the South Pacific. I was actually born in American Samoa, and my dad was teaching there. He's not Samoan, nor am I, but he was doing his dissertation for his PhD in educational psychology, and he was studying the Samoan culture and how they learn. And ultimately, that led to me being born there. I only lived there till I was about 6 months old, and then I've been in Southern California the rest of my life. I would say my life was, in a lot of ways, magical. I do meet people all the time that look back and they say, oh, I had a really tough childhood. That's not me, if I'm being super blunt and honest here. I had great, and still do have, amazing parents. My parents separated when I was 3, so I did have that part of my life. But actually, I look at it as a blessing, because it led to me having other parent exposure with my stepmom, Marie, who was absolutely incredible as well. My mom remarried to a guy named John. And so I had this whole other life that existed outside of my initial nucleus, and with my mom and my dad. And so I had, more presents at Christmas, more things at my birthday. And, it was an amazing time. But most of my childhood was spent playing sports. Got really big into baseball. That was really my primary outlet for activity. I played all sports, but baseball was my thing. And so I moved up into all of the leagues that I could play in. I managed to get on the all-star teams. And then when I went to high school, started playing right away, was on the JV team, and then made varsity and started on varsity and loved it. So, that kind of kept me out of trouble, really. I didn't do anything that was what one would consider the naughty things in high school or as a child. I was kind of a good kid and hung around with a lot of other really good kids.
So when did you realize you had this creative bent to you? Is it because you're growing up in Southern California and it's just all around? Or because you first venture really barely an adult is movies?
Yeah, it was 11th grade in high school. I had this teacher named Rose Gilbert. A lot of people from Southern California know who she is. She's kind of an icon. She's passed away now, but when I had her, she was in her 70s. She ended up teaching, to her high 80s, maybe even her 90s. Wow. I mean, she was a staple. She started at Palisades High School, which is where I went in the early days in the 50s. And she didn't need to work. Her husband was quite wealthy. So she was a philanthropist and a teacher at the same time, but she taught English, AP English. And she had a project, a school assignment, where she had everyone make a video. And that was where I fell in love with the idea of doing something creative on camera, both behind the camera and the editing side of things, but then also helping to choreograph what it would look like to put together some funny skits. And so as I look back on that sort of planted the seed for when I went to college, and I went to Loyola Marymount, which is a school literally up the street from where I live now. I started as a business major, but within the first semester, I said, I want to switch. And so I got lucky enough to get accepted into the film program, studied film in school, and out of school, I kind of let loose and went a little bit wild for the first few years. I was exposed, and I'm going to be super transparent here, I was exposed to the drug ecstasy. And ultimately that became the sort of focal point for my film, which is called Rolling. And it's about the life that many people end up living when they experiment with the drug MDMA, also known as ecstasy. And so that led me into making a movie about ecstasy.
Is there any chance that we can see the movie anywhere? I watched the trailer on YouTube, but that's only I found.
Yeah, no, it's available. And fortunately, it's less available than it was. It's funny, it's kind of gone from being available everywhere. I mean, you're talking Amazon, Netflix, YouTube. This is when it was released, was back in the day where everyone was pirating. So I know a ton of people got to see it just because it was available on the black market, if you will. But today, yeah, it is available. You just got to type in Rolling Movie. There are some sites that still show it. I believe you could still buy it on YouTube. It's like $1.99 or something like that. But it was streaming on Netflix for years. We got a distribution deal. Was really fortunate that the film did really well. Had sort of a cult following and went to festivals all over the world. We were in Germany and London and Australia. Won multiple film festivals. Won a festival in San Francisco. Won a festival in New York. And while the film wasn't necessarily a financial windfall, or at least the type of windfall that one would hope, was an amazing experience. I'm still friends with many of the people that I made the film with. And it was a success in a lot of ways in that it did have an audience and it did really well. And for me, life is about experiences. And so that's an experience that I absolutely treasure and one that I look back on with great fondness.
But why did you stop making movies?
It sort of happened by accident. The filmmaking process, it was a long process. Admittedly, I'm a perfectionist, so I spent longer than I probably needed to on the project. Started writing in 2003. The film didn't get distributed until 2009. So, edited, pre-production in 2004, shot it in 2005, edited in 2006, took it to festivals in 2007, finally landed a distribution deal in 2009. And then in 2010, or actually right before 2010, the end of 2009, I started working with my brother to produce some marketing videos for a solar company that he was working for. And at the time, solar was very much a new concept from a standpoint of accessibility for the masses. Mostly it was something that rich people got to look cool or to have a status symbol, but it wasn't something that the average homeowner really considered because it was price prohibitive. And I had the good fortune of having close proximity to my brother and learning about solar and about how things had changed with the solar lease and the power purchase agreement. And that led me to say, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't just be making marketing videos. Maybe I should actually do this myself. And so I got a position as a sales consultant working for Varango Solar in the first part of 2010. I didn't know if it'd be a part-time thing and just something to try, but I immediately just loved it. I loved that I felt good about it. I loved that I was making substantial money. I loved that it was something that was just helping the planet and helping the people that I was talking to. So there were so many benefits that sort of led to the beginning of the trajectory of my second career, which has been in renewables and then ultimately in the training and learning space.
So let me get this straight. You make a film, you sell a film, you get a fancy film school degree from a fancy film school, and then you go into being a
I know. Well,
panel salesman.
And it's funny because again, I didn't intend. It was not by intention. It was just by the reality of life, right? I knew I was starting a family. I knew I needed to have money to support the family, and ultimately, I could go make another movie. But when I do the math on 7 years of my life, now granted, I didn't need to spend 7 years on my next film, and I actually do plan to make more movies, and I do plan to make more films. If you had told me then that I would have a 10-year career, I would say you're nuts. My cousin said it best, that my career is sort of just up and to the right. It kept on going up. So I started as a salesman, moved into management, became the director of sales, left that company as the vice president of sales. And this is one of the top 5 solar companies in the state at the time. And so I even think maybe in the nation at the time. So it was doing incredibly well. It was right behind Sunrun and Solar City in terms of what they were doing. And so that led to me as the VP of sales getting at least some attention from other companies. So Solar City called me, and I had the good fortune of meeting with their chief revenue officer and their executive vice president. And they flew me up to San Francisco and definitely wooed me and told me that, hey, we're working for a company that maybe one day will become Tesla. And so it was exciting, and I just jumped in. And so I moved over to Solar City. And when I moved over to Solar City, I had the opportunity to bring back that creative side because I was the head of internal communications to start. And so I created a television show called SCTV, or Solar City Television. And this was not your just standard corporate TV show. I mean, we had a $250,000 facility. I flew up there every week to do a weekly broadcast with our CRO, an amazing dynamic leader that just had oozes charisma. And so we had thousands of salespeople, about 7,000 salespeople at the time. And so I would be broadcasting these shows, and it was such a rush because it was, I mean, we're talking 3 cameras set up. There was a whole control room. I had to hire another producer. And so it was an amazing, amazing time. And that then led to the training side of everything that would happen from there.
Was it hard for a film production guy to get into sales? Because, as Pete said, it's kind of weird, your transition from movies to sales.
Yeah, I wouldn't say weird for me or hard for me. It was just something different. And I didn't lose that creative side to me. I'm a people person. I love people. I love interacting with people. And so I got the opportunity to go into people's homes and be myself and just share with them, hey, there's a way for you to put solar panels on your roof. This is going to lower your electric bill. You're going to do something good for the planet. And I ended up doing really well, financially, and just from my own kind of heart. I felt great about what I was doing to help the planet. Part of the reason I joined Solar City, aside from it becoming Tesla, is there's a incredible nonprofit called Give Power. And Give Power, at the time, they put solar on schools. For every megawatt we installed, they would put a solar system on a school. They've since completely, I would say, taken another level in terms of what they have done. And so they're providing water for developing countries. They're building microgrids, and they're doing so much to help a lot of the people around the world that don't have the benefit of what we would consider basic necessities. And that's something really special. And so making a movie about ecstasy was cool. Helping people get drinking water, that's a whole lot cooler in my mind. And so as I look forward, and I'm happy to share the Tesla transition, but as I look forward to what I'm doing now, the movies I want to make, they're not movies that necessarily are the type of movie I would have made 10, 20 years ago. They're the type of movie that I think will help further what I believe is the most important challenge that we face, and that is the climate crisis that we're in. And I think ultimately, if we can do things together as a society to help make sure that we live sustainably, regardless of what anyone's belief is on, is it man-made, is it not man-made? My belief is, regardless of what you believe, surely you can believe that we can live more sustainably than we do today, where we just completely evaporate all of our natural resources because of us just needing more consumption in our lives. And that could mean any number of things that we consume on a daily basis. We are destroying our planet, and the numbers don't lie. So regardless of the cause of the climate crisis, we as a society can live much more sustainably than we do today. And so the cause and the thing that gets a fire under my belly today is doing things that will help us live in a way that will allow future generations to have the same type of amazing planet that does exist today, that if we don't do these changes, may not in the future.
Your narrative about corporate responsibility and charity does not follow the narrative that we hear from the press a lot. It is folks like Elon Musk and all these other companies out there that take on these issues that governments really shouldn't be in, because it is too small. It requires too much nimble activity and doesn't require a lot of bureaucracy. And a lot of the effort that goes into these nonprofit-based things is done through passion that you can't get out of a bureaucracy. So first off, thanks for being part of that and pushing forward on that. And I submit that in a very short amount of time, at least in the sunny states, each individual house will be its own power plant. You'll have a whole house battery. You'll generate power from your windows, your paint, all the entire house will consume solar energy and pump that back into a grid where, we can be self-sustaining and we're not going to be dependent on aging utilities like PG&E, Commonwealth Edison, any of those kind of companies. So it's great to see you guys out there pioneering and doing those things. Let's talk a little bit about the Tesla transition and get into that, because that also is fascinating and again points to the future of where we're headed. If you believe in electric cars or not, here they are. And by the way, I totally agree with you. We should be better stewards of the earth. And we had Dr. Stephen Running on, who won a Nobel Peace Prize with Al Gore that year. And he's a climatologist. And he's like, look, I'm very reasonable about this. If we're going to let people frack, that's fine. But don't let them have a contract that allows methane and other, natural gases just to leak into the atmosphere. That's our resource as America. You don't get to just leak that into the air. Apart from the fact that it's potentially damaging to the atmosphere, that's a resource and you're wasting it. So if you want to work this field, absolutely, let's do that, because petrochemicals do have a place in our society, but you don't get to waste a resource by doing it. And so let's take care of better things better. Let's also not get rid of a car every 5 years and crush it up and turn it into waste and scratch down another mountain to go build another car. So we've got to get better with our consumption. Here's what I always say: reduce, reuse, Reese Witherspoon.
I love it.
But we can all do those things better. So comment on that, but then transition that into the Tesla days.
Yeah. So let me just take your first point in the corporate responsibility, and then I'll transition to Tesla. So, there are a lot of companies out there that are doing things to eliminate their carbon footprint, to go to net zero. And then even a company like Microsoft, for example, they're going back to the very first day that they started business, and they're looking at all of the carbon that they put into the atmosphere since day one. How do they go back and do enough to literally zero all of that out? And that means planting trees. That means figuring out ways to extract and remove carbon from the atmosphere any way possible to not just go net zero, but to go net zero retroactively to day one since they went in business. And, you got leaders like Salesforce, for example, and Mark Benioff, and part of the Trillion Trees initiative, where they're going to plant 1 trillion trees. And he's really advocating for what he calls a major shift in the capitalism as we know it. And it's more of a shareholder, or not a shareholder, but a stakeholder capitalism, where we as a society have more say in what happens and what the companies ultimately do. And it does lead to a lot more wise decisions on the part of organizations to do the right thing. And I think we're in a day where information is at our fingertips in a nanosecond. And so it is very public information. If a company's not a steward of the environment, not doing the right thing, and not proactively preventing harm to our planet. And so, we've gone a long time, and we kind of did it out of necessity with the Industrial Revolution and everything that's happened since, where companies have been successful as a result of growth. And let's face it, the primary focus of business has always been to make more profit. And that shift is changing from just being the focus to being part of the focus, but at the same time, earning and making profit while not at the expense of our planet and all the things that go into that. Now into the transition, even though I had known that we might become Tesla, I was still surprised that it actually ended up happening. Not surprised once Elon started talking about it, because Elon is the type of person that once he puts his mind on something, he will make it happen. And so when I was working at Solar City, I had transitioned into leading all sales training for Solar City. And at the time of the transition, even before it happened, I met a guy named Ben Putterman. Ben led all training for Tesla, and we hit it off instantly. And so when the transition happened, we got together. We had a second meeting, because we met before the transition happened. And when we got together, we had multiple conversations, and ultimately that led to me taking on a role leading onboarding. So I was the director of onboarding for Tesla. And what that meant is that globally, any person that started with the company, my team would do the first training for them, their initial introduction into Tesla. And I love that, because one of the things that I've always sort of loved doing is I love putting on parties. So we didn't talk about it, but out of college, I did a lot of live events, mostly New Year's events. So we did an event at the LAX Encounter restaurant, that spaceship looking thing. I rented that whole thing out. I did a New York theme event on the top of the Bellage Hotel where I had Times Square and the ball dropped and projection and snow blowing at the strike of midnight and Central Park with grass around the pool. And so I'd done a bunch of these parties. And I just looked at, when you start an organization, this is a golden opportunity to create the type of atmosphere and environment where people feel so welcome and so excited about what they're doing that they're going to hit the ground running faster than they ever would have if it was some stale, boring, normal corporate training that sucks. And most corporate training sucks. And so what we tried to accomplish was create that environment where it was a party, where there's music, where there's games and activities, and where people start to understand and recognize just how important it is to work for Tesla. And that was an amazing time because I got to really do something that I feel passionately about, which is creating atmospheres where people will remember what they were doing at the time they started Tesla. So we'd bring a Tesla into the location and people could touch it, they could see it, they could play with it. There was a selfie area where people could take pictures of themselves with like Tesla in the background. We bring on all these amazing things. We tried to get one of the early Roadsters in there. We tried to get the projection Tesla, which had a basically, it was retrofitted. Elon actually owns this one. It retrofitted with a projector on top of it. And they took this all over the country and they actually made a film, a documentary with this, where they would project sort of the impacts of climate change on large buildings. We tried to get that into our facility, but didn't end up happening. So I did that for the first about a year at Tesla. And then as things sort of changed, I had the opportunity to be promoted again. And this time I was promoted to lead all of sales training and product training for Tesla. And so, I only did that for a short time. It was only about 6 months, but it was an amazing time. I got to work with some incredible people. And so, honestly, I was learning a ton. So people that know way more about Teslas than I could ever know, I was learning from them because they were on my team and they were people that had really done some amazing work. And I was excited to work with each of them because they had so much talent. And that's the one thing about Tesla is the people are incredible. Their talent, their passion, what they believe and how they go about their daily business is something really magical. And I will always remember just that feeling of working with so many incredible people. And for that reason, I just feel like I have an obligation and a duty now that I'm doing what I'm doing to sort of carry on that sort of banner. And even though I don't work at Tesla today, I'm still a massive believer in the mission to, accelerate our adoption of sustainable energy and to do the things necessary to make sure that we are stewards of this wonderful planet that we got.
Hey, this is P.A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
Even though I don't work at Tesla today, I'm still a massive believer in the mission to, accelerate our adoption of sustainable energy and to do the things necessary to make sure that we are stewards of this wonderful planet that we got.
Yeah, you learned a lot from Elon Musk, that's obvious. And you were inspired by Tesla's master plan. And then you come up with your own plan. Can you share that idea with us?
Sure. Yeah, it's funny. Most people probably don't know about his master plan, but if you do follow him at all, he created a plan well before Tesla did any of the major things that it's done, where he talked about, he wants to make a relatively expensive sports car, use the money from that to make a nice sedan, use the money from that to make an SUV, use the money from that to make a more affordable mass market car, which is the Model 3. And then all the while, make sure that we're also providing electricity that is renewable through solar. And so that there kind of gives a little bit of light into why he ended up buying Solar City, which for those that don't know, Solar City was started and founded by his cousins. And so the Rive brothers, and they, I had the opportunity to work with them, and they were super involved with the shows that we put together. And I made some great videos with both Lyndon and Pete Rive. And so when I transitioned to Tesla, it was exciting to be at least in close proximity to just the visionary that Elon is. I mean, he is the Thomas Edison of our time. And he was able to have the foresight to put together this master plan. And he ultimately made a master plan part due, which then carries on from where he left off, right? Now we have the Model Y, we have the Cybertruck, we have everything he's doing with the semi. And I got to go to the semi event where they unveiled the semi truck. And then as a surprise, they unveiled the new Roadster. And I was sitting there front row, I'm all over the camera. And I will never forget that experience to be a part of that in this historical moment. Yeah, I learned a lot from Elon, even though I didn't have the opportunity to sort of be face to face with him and working with him in the way that maybe some would work with their CEO. I was on conference calls with him. I did get to hear him firsthand. My boss reported to him, and it was truly fascinating to see how he thinks. He asks questions. He asks a lot of questions to try to get to the quickest solution that will make sense for whatever the issue is. And to your question, I just was truly inspired by what he did. So I created my own version of a master plan. And what I'm doing right now is, first and foremost is I want to build an audience through LinkedIn and through my podcast. And the idea behind that is I'm making sure that the people that I meet and the people that I interview on my show, not only do they have a remarkable story to tell, but they're doing remarkable things to help our planet and to help humanity. And the type of person that I truly look up to and admire is somebody that can be successful in business, but can also do it in a way that, as I mentioned earlier, is benefiting not just their bottom line and their pocketbook, but benefiting the environment that we live in. And so as I wrote the master plan, there's several things that go into it. I'm in the process of putting together some concepts for my book that I'm writing.
Yeah.
And so that's another piece of my master plan. I have a green tech website that I'm building, and this is sort of a kind of behind the scenes project that I'm working on. But then I'm also planning a documentary where the documentary will do a lot of the same work that I'm doing, but more telling stories about innovators and entrepreneurs that are doing good business. And so the working title is Good Business, where good business is not just making money. Good business is doing the right thing. And so, you look at a company like Patagonia, for example, and their CEO who goes above and beyond when it comes to doing the right thing, and their whole culture and their whole DNA is all about making sure that they are sustainable and they do it in the right way. So that would be an example of the type of company that inspires me and the type of company that I would want to be a part of my study in the documentary. So working on that later this year and hope to release it the following year. So got a lot going on, a book, a documentary, a podcast. Right now, my primary focus is the podcast and is on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn to me is a portal to virtually everyone who has had some form of success I shouldn't say everyone, that's a bit of but most people that have had some level of success in business have some sort of a LinkedIn presence. And so I'm amazed at how many people I've gotten to meet that I otherwise would have zero access to as a result of LinkedIn.
It's a big, big plan. I would call it that instead of like a master plan. It's huge.
A big plan.
So one, I want to say these words out loud to you before I forget. It's a guy named Jay Tuthill. It's a corporation called Tuthill Corp. And they go out and they purpose. This is a corporation that manufactures things. And he's like, I need you guys to go out and find what aliveness is. And so they made a web series called The Search for Aliveness. And they've been all over the world. So you think about this every season, and you know what it costs to film things. It's $100,000 at least to do this project. And this guy is not about manufacturing. It's almost like the byproduct of what he does. But when you're in his company, he wants you to find your purpose, find your aliveness. And if that is outside of the company, let's find the best path for you so you get over on a path, have a plan. Absolutely the kind of guy you should be talking to, because he's doing so much more than just simply making widgets. He's helping people have the opportunity to make a life, which to me creates more people like you who want to do something bigger than what they're already doing. And we need more folks like that.
Well, yeah, I welcome any introduction and connection. So thank you for the advice. And there's so many people out there that are doing incredible things. And the thing is, it's often not as widely known as it should or could be. And so for me, I think kind of at least I feel like it's a responsibility that I have, is in any way possible, if I can help or bring light or bring even if they already have a huge following and a huge amount of exposure, if I could bring even more, hey, that's even better, right?
Yeah,
we live in a society where that is the golden destination, which is getting the right people, the right ideas, the right concepts, the type of exposure that will help them flourish is, I believe, a really important part of how we live in today's society, because there's so much noise out there. There's so much going on, and it's really easy to allow ourselves to get kind of into this consumer state where all we do is just mindlessly consume and just mindlessly listen or watch things that don't add value, that don't provide anything of substance. My hope is that we can make a shift as a society, really. And like, this is not saying that I don't enjoy watching, a TV show that maybe is just pure entertainment. I do. And I love that escape, but I think it's about balance. And I think if we can create more vehicles and more funnels to the people, the organizations, the ideas, and anything that is doing something positive, I think that is a huge win for us and for humanity, for that matter.
I hear your mission coming through and your motives, which are obviously wonderful. If I'm Elon Musk and I've got a guy like you who all you've done is kill it, get promoted, and like you're accidentally doing this well, why leave? Why let this resource leave? What does Elon say? I don't need Billy. He needs to go do something else. How do you get to that point where you have the courage to leave this wonderful opportunity? And I mean, like, let me just say this. Before I went to combat one of the years, I bought a bunch of Tesla stock for my daughter because I'm like, this guy's going somewhere. And that stock has grown a lot. And I'm like, her future is set just on that one bit of stock that she has. And it's not a lot, but that the company's going gangbusters. Why do you leave that? Why does he let you leave? The more important question.
Well, and the thing is there's a lot of people that left Tesla throughout my time there. And this is unfortunate. There was a lot of people that left both on good terms and not good terms. And when I say that, what I mean is there's a lot of people that were let go. There's a lot of people that left because it's a hard place to work. It's a very demanding place to work. It's not a 9-to-5 type of job, typically. For me, just being super transparent and honest here, my role changed. So I got promoted to a global role. I had people reporting to me in Europe. I had people reporting to me in Asia. I had people reporting to me in North America. And so at the time, the stock was not doing well. The stock had seen some really rocky moments. It actually went down even further after I left. But ultimately, my role as the global leader of sales training didn't make sense for the company anymore. And therefore, the decision was made to not have a global leader overseeing all of sales. And yeah, I could have stayed. I could have done another job there. I could have done many different jobs there. But ultimately, for me, I had been on this surfboard, this wave, for a really long time. And when I say this surfboard, it started me selling solar to somebody in somebody's home. And as things would evolve, that led to manager level roles, VP level roles, director level roles. And more importantly than the title, what I was doing every single one of those roles was fulfilling and incredible and amazing. And so when there wasn't a global role to do what I was doing, I kind of felt like ultimately my purpose is to not serve this mission, but my purpose is to serve this mission in another way. And if there isn't a global leader of sales and a global leader of product, and the reason why that decision was made is, let's be honest, I'm not a small ticket employee. I cost a lot of money. When you think about, there was a person reporting to me in EMEA, that person in Europe, that person can still run all of Europe and do a fabulous job. Same thing with APAC. Same thing with North America. Since I've left, the training organization as a whole has drastically decreased. And when I say drastically, I mean a fraction of what it once was. When I was there, we're talking, I had a team of 60 plus people all over the world. I would guess there's, I don't know, but far fewer than that. And then if you look at the wider training and development organization, it's also had a huge transformation. And so Elon, to his credit, needed to make sure that there were a lot of, let's call it drastic changes to the makeup of employees there. And in doing so, a lot of good people left either because they were let go or because they wanted to. And so I could easily go work for another company or even work for Tesla to do things like what I was doing. But for me, I just feel in my heart and in my entire kind of spirit that the mission that I have today is to take the building blocks that were created from learning and from being exposed to so many talented and amazing people and help other businesses and help other organizations grow and develop as a result of what I learned from my time there.
Do you miss that lifestyle, working in sales?
You know what I miss most, and I was sharing this with somebody recently, is I miss the collaboration. Mm-hmm. I'm a very collaborative person. I love being around other people, working with other people, and I've had a team, some very large teams, you know, some multiple hundreds of people, teams that I've worked with and that I've had the opportunity to lead. And so being sort of a one-man band that I am today, and granted, I have the opportunity to work with you, Damien, and that's one of my, and I mentioned this to you last year, is one of the most positive things that happened all of last year was getting to know you and getting to work with you. And the only trouble is we're 12 hours apart and many thousands of miles apart, so we don't get to have that proximity. But what I miss from the corporate life is the camaraderie, the collaboration, and the teamwork that exists because you work with others. Aside from that, you know, if I'm being super transparent, I don't miss working for a company. There are a lot of things about that I loved, and there's some things about it that I don't love. I love the freedom and the liberty of being able to dictate when I do things and why I do things. And so I don't miss that part of it, but I do miss the people and I do miss the collaboration.
Yeah, let's switch to your podcast production side. Like, you left Tesla and you started your own broadcasting media production company. It's called Insight Media. Now, besides your podcast, you have a great video series, which I love so much. You guys gotta check them out. They're on YouTube. Just type Inside Out Podcast. That's INSIGHTOUT podcast. And watch all the videos on the channel because they are amazing and really inspiring. Like, also go and listen to the podcast. You're gonna love it. You're gonna be inspired as fuck. And since couch potato like me started to work out mainly because of your show and mostly listening to the people, sharing to their stories, whether they are tragic or happy or simply inspiring. Anybody can listen to it, and you know, if you want to change the world, you better start with yourself. So far you had a great guests, from sales executives to PhDs to CEOs to, I think, New York Times bestsellers. And I'm wondering, do you have a dream guest you want to have fun Inside Out? And if yes, who is that person?
I have a lot of dream guests. In fact, I have a whole list of my dream guests. And to narrow it down to one would be difficult. But I suppose if I had to, Elon would be fascinating. It's honestly, it would be a challenging interview for me because I feel like we're very, very different people. And the guy is so off the charts smart. Whereas I'm more of like, I lead with the heart, and I'm I have high emotional intelligence, I would say. I read people and understand the nuances of interpersonal communications, and I'm a hugger and I'm a loving guy. You know, he's a bit more cerebral. He's a bit more of an engineering mindset. He's the type of guy that, you know, he's always solving problems in his head, But I actually do think I would get along with him. You know, sometimes opposites attract, even in a platonic, non-sexual sense. I think if we were able to smoke a joint like he did on Joe Rogan, I think it would be a fascinating show. And certainly he is somebody that I admire and respect and feel has all the right intentions in what he is doing. And does that mean that he's perfect? Does that mean he always makes the right and the wisest decisions? He doesn't, just being blunt. But ultimately, he's got to make decisions on a daily basis. And he's not looking at like the next year or two. He's looking hundreds of years into the future, which is a fascinating take on how you go about doing your life and doing your business. But to answer your question, and there's a few questions in there, I'd say to me, one of the people that most fascinate me is Oprah. And the reason why is, she's got a story that she didn't have the clearest pathway to her success. She didn't have things handed to her. She figured it out on her own. And that's a really amazing story. But I most appreciate the fact that, she went out on her own, even though she had anything and everything she wanted when she worked for all the media companies that were paying her handsomely to do the work she was doing. But now her work is really closely tied to a lot of the work that I like to do, which is enriching the lives of other people and helping them on their path to being better human beings. And I just appreciate that. Her and Deepak Chopra are two of my idols, and would love to have either of them on my show in a dream world. There's so many people out there that have a huge debt of gratitude because they've helped me, Tim Ferriss or Michael Hyatt or so many amazing leaders out there. I mentioned Patagonia. The founder of Patagonia would be an amazing guest because of what he's done. Al Gore, politics aside, it's a shame that so many people have so much, I would say, not hatred, but mistrust of Al Gore, or don't believe climate change is real because it's become a sort of political battle in terms of, is it real or is it not real? But I've seen him speak live, and I've never seen a speaker speak with more conviction and passion and heart. So I'd love to interview him.
Mm-hmm. He was a vice president, right?
Yeah, he's a vice president. He was.
Yeah.
The meat of the show is to examine insights. And when I say insights, these are times in our life where we have an aha moment, a breakthrough moment, and something clicked, something connected, something happened to where it changed the trajectory of our life in some way, shape, or form. And so we all have these moments in life. And so the idea and the spirit of the show is to examine those moments and look at our life moments from the lens of insights, because insights happen when our mind is quiet and we give ourselves the ability to not be processing so many things simultaneously. Our prefrontal cortex, which is the critical thinking part of our brain right behind our forehead, it's often overworked. It's used so much that we humans have a difficult time having these breakthroughs. That's often why we have them when we're taking a shower or when we're doing something where we're not thinking, working out, going to the bathroom, taking a walk, kind of giving our brain a break for a little bit. And all of a sudden, boom, light bulb goes off and you have these moments. And so we examine those moments. And so to your other question, sort of kind of like on the vision and where I want to take this with everything else, it's like, to me, I just want to keep meeting amazing people that have a story to tell, that have insights that will inspire others. I'm so glad to hear that you were inspired to stumble off your couch and hit the gym. That's what it's all about, because you had an insight through somebody else. And when you hear things enough times,
That's true.
You start to think, well, maybe there's something to this meditation thing. Maybe there's something to this not looking at your phone when you wake up in the morning. Maybe there's something to this, whatever insight is, going to be valuable to you in your life. So yeah, man.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's great words. Maybe there's something to this, and I love that you're taking the success that you've had and trying to create your own thing, and what your focus is just fantastic. What's a question we should have asked you? This is your first big interview since you've started all this stuff. What have we missed out on that you're like, oh, they should ask me this?
Well, that question in and of itself is a phenomenal question.
Thanks.
I love that question. I guess you can ask me, we talk about Elon, and I think people are super curious about that. So maybe a question would be, what were some of the learnings that I had directly from Elon? I mentioned a few of them. So that would be a good question, I suppose.
What would be some of the learnings that you grabbed from Elon along the way?
Yeah, so this is top of mind for me.
Yeah.
Because I actually just wrote a post on LinkedIn about this, and I'll share a couple. One is what he calls first principles thinking. And this is a really important idea and concept and insight, if you will, which really means don't reason by analogy, by looking at what already exists and trying to incrementally improve from there. Oftentimes we see, for example, a car exists, let's just make the car a little bit better. Or this is the way all windshields on a car, that's the way they've always been, so let's just make it a little bit better. No, he thinks about it from the perspective of the only limitation we have are limitations set forth by the laws of physics. Meaning, if we can't physically do something because it's literally impossible, then it's on the table. Everything else we can do. And so the guys I remember when we were building the solar tiles for the solar roof, they got early prototypes of what it looked like and he hated it. And so he immediately said, no, this won't work. I mean, he's got such high expectations. And part of the reason he has high expectations is he doesn't want people in his organization to mindlessly assume that what already exists is the right model or right example of what they should draw from to create what that company will create. And so first principles thinking is a really, really big one. The other thing that stands out is uncompromising when it comes to failure. When I say that, what I mean is he expects you to fail. If you're not failing, you're not innovating enough. And he's actually got a great quote that's something along those lines, that failure is going to happen. And if you're not failing, you're not innovating. And so that's a really important premise. And the last one I'll share is just this, and most people know this, but his persistence is off the charts. He will not give up. If you believe in something strongly enough and passionately enough, you will do everything in your power to make it happen. And so that kind of conviction, that kind of deep-seated belief that what you're doing matters so much that you will not stop until you get it done. I think that's a huge takeaway that I have in watching and observing him and the way he thinks. And I will share one other thing is being on some conference calls with him, and mostly they were in times when we were doing delivery. And what delivery is at the end of the quarter, literally everybody gets together. When I say everybody is in delivery. The whole company converges on the delivery hubs around the country or around the world, really, to help get these cars into the hands of the customers. And so I had a high level position as a director, but that didn't preclude me from being part of the delivery team. And it was actually some of the best, most memorable experiences I had while working there. And there were days where I would start at 8 a.m, and the last day of the month, I didn't leave till after 3. I literally handed the last customer, I helped the last customer get their car. It was actually after midnight, so I wasn't sure if it would count towards our numbers, but it was a SpaceX employee, and ultimately I think it did count towards our numbers. But point being is this amount of teamwork and camaraderie that was created as a result of everyone getting together to help with this common cause was amazing. But going back to the conference calls that I got to be a part of during these times, what stood out is excuses do not fly with Elon Musk. And he will not be afraid to very quickly remove somebody should you make an excuse. And that right there just shows that his patience level is very low. His threshold is incredibly low when it comes to people finding, making, or using what he would consider poor excuses for lack of innovation and thinking creatively to solve problems. Because if you're going to change the planet and do the type of work that company is doing, you can't just say that it's not possible when in reality, in most cases, in 90+% of cases, unless the law of physics is precluding you from doing it, it can probably be figured out in another way.
There's a part of your show called the lightning round, and I couldn't resist but still one question from your show. Yeah.
Go for it, man. You have free carte blanche to steal any of them, man.
Yeah, just one. We learned a lot about you, and if there is something we haven't learned, what might surprise the audience about Billy Samoa Saleebey?
One thing we didn't talk about is my passion for travel. I'm a big, huge believer in the power of gaining exposure to other cultures, other people, other ideas. And so along with making a movie in my 20s, it was kind of a combination of make a movie and travel. So I went all over the world. I've been to over 40 countries. I've been to every continent but to Antarctica. And I feel super fortunate that I did that as a young person, because there's never a time where you're more open and less jaded than when you're young. And so not only did I get exposure to different people and ideas and cultures and things of that nature, but I made a lot of friends. I lived in London for a year. The people I lived with, I'm still in contact with today. I had my friend Kristen, who lives in Australia, visit earlier last month, and just had an amazing time reminiscing about our experiences together.
He's a Macedonian descent, right?
He is. He's from his family is Macedonian, like you are. And so it was just such a great time to reminisce. I met him on a train in Nice in France. And here we are 20 some odd years later, hanging out and doing all the things that we did when he was visiting. And so for me, I'd say kind of what I didn't share was just my passion and love for being around other people. One other thing is I'm a huge ramen lover. Part of my travels included going to Japan. And when I went to Japan, I fell in love with ramen. So fun fact for me, if you want to make me happy, just let's go to a ramen place and dive headfirst into a giant bowl of ramen.
Yeah, I know about that because your son has a YouTube channel and he talked about ramen. You both talked about ramen.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's a fun show. It's called Kid Epic. So that's also available. And thanks for the shout out on the videos. A lot more videos to come. A lot of the video content I'm producing is now living on LinkedIn. It's going to go on my YouTube page as well.
Let people know how can find you more about everything.
Yeah, well, the podcast is just Inside Out. You can go to the website insideoutshow.com, and it's on all the platforms. It's on Apple and Spotify and Google and Stitcher. So just type in Inside Out. Make sure it's got my name. And then as far as everything else, find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect, and anyone that's interested or wants to learn more, feel free to connect or follow if you want to be informed when I post new content. I'm posting content daily, both video and written content. I'm sharing ideas that I've learned throughout my journey and really trying to kind of build an audience in the regard that will help my mission and to help inspire and motivate and do things necessary to make us all better and as a result help our planet.
Yeah, thanks, man. This was a great talk. And let's talk another time on the Break It Down show.
Oh, I loved it. Well, thank you so much, guys. I'm so honored and feel an incredible debt of gratitude to both of you for inviting me on the show and just letting me speak freely. I'm elated to have this opportunity to connect and chat with you guys. You're doing amazing work, and I'm super inspired by the 600 plus episodes that you've done. And it's something truly special to see the work you're doing and all the interesting, fascinating people that you've had a chance to meet with. Just puts the fuel and kind of wind in my sails to keep me motivated to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm 25 episodes deep. Actually, with this next episode that we're about to release, it's our 25th episode. So still a long way from the 600, but little by little, we will do our best. We'll get there. So thanks, Pete. Thanks, Damien. Really appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Thanks. Awesome.